I want nurses to be heard. And not just because it's good for the profession and I love my profession. Nurses are speaking out. They're marching on Washington. They're speaking out on social media. They're coming together. And we're not only doing it for us, we're doing it for you. We're doing it for all of you, for all of our patients and all the people that we take care of and the people that we serve.
Our guest today is a nurse, writer, humanitarian with a passion to help improve the lives of children in her community as well as the global community. She penned her incredible life journey in her books Lead with Your Heart and Enjoy the Journey, and she is joining us today to discuss her latest book that's coming out December of 2023 called Frontlines 2020 Nurses Speak, which is a memoir that covers her time as a nurse during the pandemic. Welcome back to the show, my friend, Martha Hoy.
Oh, good to see you, Mike. Good to be back.
Good to see you. Martha, it is great to see you, and it's great to have you here. I know you've been traveling all over the world, and I appreciate you sitting still for us long enough to have this interview today. I know you're very busy, and you're a frontlines nurse, and everyone tuning in, I think, can respect that and should be respecting that, especially for my audience. So thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So guys, you can tune in with Martha. I have her social media, her website, all clickable in the show notes. Her books will be linked there. Her new book as well. If it's out when you guys are watching this, it'll be linked. And then also, if you want to hear her amazing, that's not even a good way to say it, incredible, devastating, just unbelievable, but true survival story, check out episode 106 of Mic'd Up. Martha was on the show to share that with how she became Mother Martha. And if you're wondering what the heck that means, check out 106 and then come back here to see and learn about what she's got going on the front line. So let's dive right in. I know we have limited time. So let's pull back the curtain a little bit today on the state of healthcare throughout the pandemic and the aftermath that you're dealing with now. And wherever you'd like to begin, the floor is yours.
Well, the reason that I wanted to write about, nurses in 2020 and working the front line is because of what is going on in healthcare right now. Last May on International Nurses Day, we had 1 million nurses march on Washington. We have safety issues in the hospital. We are taking too many patients, 1 nurse to 8 patients, 1 nurse to 10 patients. Some of the things that are going on were going on before 2020. Violence against nurses has increased by 63%.
From the patients, like directly?
From the patients, yes.
You're taking care of somebody and they're getting more violent. I never even thought about that in the past, like how you're vulnerable, really, if somebody is nasty to you, especially if it's a bigger person or something. I never really thought of that. So people are obviously fed up with the system, and they're taking it out on nurses right now.
Yes. Yeah.
And what happens in a situation like that? How are you protected? Doesn't seem like anytime I've either been at a hospital because I'm in there as a patient myself or visiting a family member or friend, it never seems like there's a great amount of security. So how are you protected? Is it really like everyone for themselves?
Well, it depends on the hospital that you work in. Some hospitals have teams for that. You can always call security and they will show up. Yeah. And it depends on the state. Each state has their own rules. In some states, I live in the state of Nevada, it is actually a felony to assault a nurse.
Well, that's good.
So there are things in place, but unfortunately, it has become more of a problem. And the violence against nurses has become more violent. There's been stabbing, shooting, that's why I wanted to speak out about this, because it's not only affecting the profession that I love, it's affecting patient care. Mm-hmm. Because if your nurse has to take care of 8 patients, and we're also having to fight against violence against us, how are you going to get good care?
Yeah, it's like you're got your head on a swivel. But also, you said 8 to 10 patients per nurse. What was the number pre-pandemic? What was the high level that, I mean, there has to be regulations. I believe you shared this with me off camera, the regulations. So what were they before and what are they now? And do you see this ever being able to turn back to a healthy place?
Well, it depends on the state. The state of California has patient ratios that are mandated. The nurses there fought very hard to stand up for the right to have that, and I'm very proud of them. And
What's
there
the
are others.
ratio? What do they have
It's
in
the
California?
ratio. It's a 1 to 5, and unless your
Okay.
patient is on telemetry, then you have less. If they're
Okay.
on heart monitors, where you have to monitor their heart.
Right.
So, and there are more states that are coming forward and jumping on board with that for patient safety, but not fast enough and not enough.
Mm-hmm. What would you say are some of the biggest challenges you had during the pandemic as a nurse?
Well, personally, nurses, we had to balance our commitment to take care of our patients with our own personal safety. We had these carts set outside of every, whole units were cleared and they became COVID units. I started out in the ER, working the ER when the beginning of 2020 and all of this started to come about. And then I went up on a unit to work, and I was working mostly COVID units in 2020, and sometimes I would work the ICU. So for us as nurses, it was balancing our commitment to care for our patients and also our own safety. We would have to put on all the safety gear to get to our patient. I called it the worst wardrobe change ever. Because it was like this big cart outside the patient's room, and you had to properly put everything on, of course, because you have to protect yourself. And then you go in, you take care of your patient, and you come out and you take it all off. So the challenge there became we were running out of supplies.
You had to change your wardrobe for every time you stepped into a
Yes.
different room to serve a
Yes.
different patient. So
Yes.
we're talking like full head to toe suit.
Full head to toe. Full head to toe.
Every patient. So I mean, how
Every
many did you
patient.
wear in a day? 100 of them? Like you
A
went through 100
lot.
suits in a day?
A lot. There was
Oh
a
my
lot.
God.
A lot of
I didn't even-
gloves. A lot of caps. Most of us had our own eye protection.
Yeah.
I had my own cap that I wore. You put it on the beginning of the day to cover your hair, and you kept it on all day long. But yes, you had to change your mask. You had to change your protective gear every time you went into a patient's room. And
Wow.
then you
Wow.
had to properly take it off, because taking it off properly is very important, because you can expose yourself if you don't take them off properly.
Right. And obviously, I mean, you're protecting yourself because you have to think about your livelihood. You're protecting your patients, trying to do the best you can for them. And then you got regulations that are changing every 15 minutes. So can you
Yes.
talk about how you navigated all the changing regulations? I mean, were there a lot of meetings? Were there emails that
Yes.
you had to check when you walked in the door? What did that look like?
Well, every day that you went to your shift, you had to go, through a certain entrance, because you could not go into the hospital without having your temperature checked.
Mm-hmm.
We had employee entrances at that time that we all had to go through. Every day, there would be, as new information was known, the rules and regulations changed all the time. So if somebody asked you, what is our visitor policy today, you would have to ask, based on what the rules were at that moment, based on the information that they knew. So it was ever changing. Nurses had to, and everyone at the bedside had to find new ways of doing the things that we had already done. The things that we had done on a daily basis. And for me, when the pandemic came, I had been a nurse for over a decade, so it wasn't, none of it was new. But because we were running out of supplies, you couldn't have visitors come in. So even the way that people grieved, that you helped people grieve, had to change. So, we brought in iPhones and things like that so people could talk to their family members because they couldn't come in the hospital. And, we need each other. And I think that's probably one thing that the pandemic taught me a lot of things, but that's one thing that it really reminded me is that we need human connection. We need each other.
Yeah.
And especially
Martha.
during times like that.
Yeah. Martha, I can share a personal story. So, this, my father passed away in December 2020 with COVID in the hospital. He was in there for about a week. None of us were able to go visit him because it was during the regulations of no visiting. My mom brought him to the hospital. She also had COVID. They caught it. They obviously were in the same home, so it was very easy to catch it, especially early on. And so they both had it. She brought him there. She was going to the room to kind of make sure he was getting taken care of properly. And they stopped her and abruptly said, you have to get out of here. Like, if you have COVID, you cannot go past this point. You need to leave. You shouldn't even be here. In the hospital, which is understandable, but it wasn't a good experience, obviously. My dad's now being sent into the room, and they're thinking, oh, I'll see you tomorrow. I'll see you in a week. I'll see you on the phone. My mom was likely not thinking I'm never going to be in the same room again, other than at my father's wake and funeral. But she didn't know that was going to be it, and none of us did. My dad, just to share a quick story, he fought through cancer, and he had a lot of different procedures and surgeries and 15 years worth of going in, different checkups, different procedures, a lot of issues with his, he had stomach cancer, or colon cancer, excuse me. So he had a lot of different procedures in that area, which are, not really easy to bounce back from. So anyway, he's been through the ringer and always came out on the other end. He always comes out of the hospital. He's built Ford tough. He worked at the Ford stamping plant for 32 years. So our joke was always, Dad's built Ford tough. He's going to be through. So we all thought, okay, Dad's got COVID. He's going in the hospital. We'll see him in about a week. He's going to fight through this. Going to get him like an oxygen machine. His lungs are going to bounce back, and we'll go and get him. We'll be good. Well, thankfully, like you just said, the nurses did have phones, and we were able to I personally did not FaceTime my dad. It's on me. My mom did. They had it coordinated with the nurses station, but I think it was just my mom who had access to know when to do that. And I also was naive. I thought he was coming home, so I wasn't in panic mode. I only have a day or two to FaceTime my dad. You know what I mean? I was checking with my mom. Can you walk people who are like myself, who maybe had a really tough experience with a family member, whether they survived or passed away in the hospital, but how were you able to coordinate those family calls? Was it coordinated at all, or was it just by trial and error to get someone on the phone?
Well, it depends. Some people would come in the hospital and we would have to figure out who they are. They couldn't tell us who they are, so we would have to look for family members. So, we tried our best to make sure that people were in contact because, thinking from their perception that your loved one, like you said, you're sitting at home and you're thinking, my dad's tough, right? It's going to be okay. I'm going to see him. And you don't know what's going on. You have no idea because if we don't tell you, you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So we were trying our best to, make sure that people were updated daily about what was going on. But for us, it was very difficult. As I said, we were trying to balance, our safety, keeping, ourselves safe. We were trying to find the new ways of doing things. We had never, I always make the joke when I came out of nursing school, I wanted to go to disaster areas and I wanted to do all this stuff. So I took all this training with the Red Cross and I had pandemic training and I sat there and I'm like, when am I ever going to use this? I'm never going to use this. I was that student going, why am I here, right?
Yeah.
So, then I ended up using it all. Well, I knew I was going to use the things with the disaster areas in East Africa and all that kind of stuff because I love that. But I never thought that we would use that.
But of course, you're not thinking, and in the near future, I'm going to be battling through a pandemic. It kind of reminds me of, not to be over dramatic, but it's almost like you guys are navigating all these murky waters. Okay, so we'll use an analogy with water. it's like the nurses and everybody at the hospital, everybody, the guy driving the ambulance,
Sure.
the EMTs on the ambulance, everybody, from police to fire to everybody that's in response to situations
Sure.
at home and within a hospital environment are navigating all these really murky waters. And then on top of it, you're also trying to save people, right? And
Yes.
you're also protecting yourself. So it's almost like, I would imagine, going on a rescue mission underwater in the deepest of blue sea with other things surrounding you, like sharks or anything that, could be deadly. And you're also like, I only have so much oxygen in my own tank, and I got to protect myself. If I can't
Yeah.
protect myself, how can I help anyone else? It's like the oxygen mask on a plane.
Yes.
They always tell you to put yours on first. So you very much have to be in that mindset. Can you share a little bit how you were able to stay, motivated and positive during that? It's a depressing, crazy, devastating time, frustrating. How were you able to come in and be level-headed during that? And did they have any counselors for you to talk
No.
to if you were having a bad moment?
No.
No.
And that was one of the things that was very frustrating, because through it all, we were given cookies that said the word hero on them, and we were told how wonderful we all are, but at the same time, no one asked us if we were okay. For me personally, I have my own coping mechanisms. I like to walk in nature. I have things that I do, and that's what kept me grounded through it all.
Mm-hmm.
And we were also dealing with the fact that a lot of us got COVID. A lot of us ended up patients and ended up on the other side of the fence, and I did as well, in the beginning of 2020. And then we lost coworkers to COVID.
Yeah.
So
Right. So now
we
you're
were
very
also
much in
dealing
that
with that.
grieving. Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of us, we even lost family members. For me, I lost a church nurse that I was very close to, that I had known for many years. So, no one asked us, are you okay? No one came to the people at the bedside and said, are you okay? How can we support you? They gave us cookies with the word hero on them.
Yeah. That's crazy. I mean, that's the human side of running an operation, whether it's a business or whether it's a hospital or anything, is making sure that everybody's okay first and foremost. And even if all you needed was just somebody to hear you out for 30 seconds, have that little bit of human connection with somebody, to know you're not in this alone, or we got you, or Martha, if you need anything, please let us know. But also realize, like, it's they're probably thinking, we can't, they were probably going through some, I'm not trying to give them an out here, by the way, like talking
Sure.
about the hospital in general, but they're also going through so many different
Sure.
things that, who knows, from the government level down, where they're
Sure.
probably feeling used and abused too, because they're told what to do, what they can't do. Tomorrow it's
Sure.
different, and they're also trying to
Sure.
run an operation and make sure you're okay. So, not saying it's okay, but I guarantee those conversations were pretty heated too, and
Oh,
everybody
absolutely.
was unsure of what tomorrow looked like.
Sure.
Can you
Because
share? We're gonna go give our sponsor some love in a minute here, but can you share any moments that stood out to you during the pandemic that you really wanted to share with the audience today, whether it's difficult or something that maybe was rewarding, like a positive story that you experienced during the pandemic?
Well, I have two. I have one negative and one positive. There was one shift in the ICU where I helped a priest give last rites to 5 people in 12 hours.
Well,
That was a difficult day.
it just happened to be that the 5 of them were all within
Yeah.
your patients, but also I'm sure that wasn't even unique. That hospital probably had many nurses that had a handful of people that within the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a few days later, we also had to make a phone call to a young lady to tell her that her mother and her brother were both in the ICU, and we didn't think that either of them were going to make it.
That was
So,
a patient, or that was one of the nurses?
well, it
That was
was
a
the
patient
patient
who was told that their brother and their mother was not going to make it?
Well, we had to call a family member. When we talked about updating family members. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So mother was in one room and her son was in another, and the closest relative was a young lady,
Mm-hmm.
and that was her mother and her brother. So we went through some difficult things too. But the one thing that stands out to me, because I worked in Las Vegas, and one of the first patients that I received from the emergency room who we suspected had COVID was this older lady, and she was quite cheerful, even though she was short of breath. And I was getting her all settled into her room, and I was putting her oxygen on her. And she looked at me and she said, "You know what? Today would have been Elvis's birthday." And I said, "Really? Okay." So as I was going about my work around her, she starts singing Elvis, her favorite Elvis song. So I was like, it's Vegas, right? So we just broke out into song.
That's great.
So people in the hallway were laughing at us. We weren't great, but we had a good time.
It goes back to the human element. And in that moment, the whole world was crazy and chaotic, but you had a connection with another person, and it didn't matter what you sounded like. You were having fun, and it took your heart and it filled it up for a moment with some love and fun. And this common thing that you had. I know you love Elvis, so it was a common thing that you guys had together, that you shared that moment, and it kind of took you out of the reality for a moment, which is great, which is why I always say comedy is the best medicine. Whenever I'm in a bad mood or something, I'll just put a goofy comedy on, and it's impossible not to laugh. And it's like, okay, your soul needed that right there, that laughter. Music's the same thing. I'll put my favorite albums on. Elvis was my dad's favorite, so it's hard to listen to Elvis now for us, because so many great memories of my dad singing like Elvis, like joking around, and his line was always, "I'm a great singer," and he'd like intentionally be not singing well. "I'm a great singer. I'm a great singer." It was funny. I took the torch, and now I say that to Isabel when I'm driving her around and I'm singing, and I'm obviously not very good, and she's laughing at me. So I kind of took that on in my dad's honor. We're going to cover a couple more questions. Martha, thank you for your time. We will give our sponsors a little bit of love right now. We'll be right back, guys. Don't go anywhere. We're here with Martha Hoy.
Podcasting is a great way to engage with your audience and stay consistently relevant. The only problem is you don't have the time or desire to produce your own show. You simply want it done for you, and that's where Social Chameleon comes in. All you need to do is press record and upload the files. We'll handle the rest. From planning, production, post-production, distribution, and digital marketing, we have you covered. We realize that times are tough and funds are tight, and Social Chameleon believes in building supportive business relationships. By clicking on the link in this promo, we'll provide you 7 free podcasting tips to get started, as well as a free 30-minute online consultation. This is the perfect opportunity for entrepreneurs, keynote speakers, industry experts, influencers, and anybody who has a personal brand. With Social Chameleon, we help you build a brand that is out of this world. We're ready and waiting, so what are you waiting for? Click on the link to get started today. Hey guys, it's Mike. I'd like to give a proper shout out to Navigator Bookkeeping. Look, for a long time, I ran my business without really understanding the full financial picture. I used my gut and my bank account balance to make decisions, which led to some poor choices and constant stress over my business's finances. I knew something needed to change. At the beginning of 2021, I made a decision that helped pave a more clear path for my business. I started working with Navigator Bookkeeping. Since then, my bookkeeping has been handled for me. I now understand the full financial story of my business, making important financial decisions much easier now, and it helps me plan for where my business is going. I highly recommend giving Navigator Bookkeeping an opportunity to help your business. Check them out at navigatingyourbooks.com. Again, that's navigatingyourbooks.com. It's time to know the full financial story of your business.
All right, we're back in action with Martha Hoy. And remember, you can get the full inside scoop about her experience as a nurse during the pandemic by ordering her book, Frontlines 2020, Nurses Speak. If it's not out while you're listening to this, realize it will be out December into the new year, late 2023, early 2024. And if you want Martha's full story about resilience, her comeback story, her survival story, go all the way back to Mic'd Up, and I have the episode number here for you, 106. And Martha shares her whole story. It was one of the most amazing conversations because I didn't know her story in great depth, and I couldn't believe that she was telling me. I thought she was telling me about a movie that came out or something. I mean, that's how crazy it is. It's like, that didn't really happen. No, that really happened? Okay.
Yeah, it really.
And it just kept getting crazier and crazier. And Martha, thank you for being on today and for sharing your story that day. I do believe your story will be turned into a movie, and I certainly hope so more people can learn about the realities of what's going on. And I know you have your heart is also in Uganda with your family there. And we can give them some love at the end of this interview, but I really would love people to go back and hear your story there. So before the break, we were talking about some many of the uncertainties that the pandemic brought, especially to healthcare and in the front lines with you and the other nurses at the hospitals that you were serving at, both in Nevada, California. You mentioned a couple of things that you learned, and I think you shared one of them. You said there's a couple others. Looking back at your experience, what lessons would you say that you learned that you would like to apply to future healthcare crises? So is there something you're like, you know what, now that we've learned this, we can tweak it and do it better next time if this happens again?
Oh, I think we can apply that to everything. You know, because there was uncertainty. We didn't know what we were dealing with. You know, at first we had no treatment. We were giving out certain medications. I called it, the Vegas cocktail, the worst cocktail ever. So as we were going along and more research was coming on, we learned more and more. And what we learned during that time is actually now in textbooks, and it's a great thing. So the new nurses, when I see them gathered in the hospital in the morning, I'm like, great, because they're going to be armed with knowledge that we didn't have, that we had to muddle through. So if this ever happens again, we're there. We know exactly what to do now. Mm-hmm. But as far as the humanity part, boy, it taught me a lot of lessons, and I'm going to be they're going to be in the book that's coming up. But it reminded me of how connected we all are. One event affected everyone on this planet. Mm-hmm. Because everybody thinks they're walking around and you're just this one single entity and nothing you do affects other people. And maybe you feel unimportant, or maybe everyone's connected in some way. Yeah. And that reminded me of that.
Yeah. I mean, perspective is huge. You could think, the world is so massive in many ways, but it's also so connected in many ways, especially now digitally. Like you said, you could be connected to anybody, anywhere. We're connected. You're in California right now. I'm in New York. It's about as far apart as you can get in the country, right? And we're talking right now. But yeah, it was a reminder of how important it is for us to protect each other, our fellow men and women, with the quarantine and everything else. But there was this weird dynamic for me, I'll just speak on, is I wanted to obey, the rules, the regulations, the authorities, but I also wanted truth, and I felt like we weren't really getting the truth, and there was multiple things that came out where they said one thing and we found out something else, and then they kind of backfired on, had to recoil and come back with something else. And I know that there was a lot of foul play. Are you willing to share anything that you maybe saw firsthand that was some foul play, or even just things that were presented to the public that you knew were not accurate that they still decided to present? Do you have any insider information there? I hate to put you on the spot like that.
No, that's okay. You have to ask. That's your job.
The whole world's watching. No pressure.
No pressure. They're watching every word. Yeah. Did I see any foul play? No. I feel like that, and I also worked at Field Hospital downtown Las Vegas. So, which is very odd.
Talk about that real quick. So that's like a pop-up, like in the moment?
Yes. The military comes in, they build a hospital, just like if we were in a war zone. It was a field hospital.
Yeah.
And tents and the little makeshift rooms and things, because Las Vegas has an underground system of homeless people.
Mm-hmm.
And, it started in the men's shelters. They found, people being ill with COVID in the men's homeless shelters. So they needed a way to triage people, people coming from that underground system coming out. Under Las Vegas, there's a whole city, of homeless people. Yeah, they have their own government, their own culture. It's quite interesting. So when I got a call asking, it's quite interesting. When I got a call asking, because of my years' experience, and as you know, as a nurse, I'm not afraid to go anywhere. I've been all over the world. So they called and said, "Do you have a problem, working with these?" No, absolutely not, honey. We're nurses, and we work with everyone. So I worked there, which was kind of odd. And it was, at that time, it was the beginning of March of 2020. And when
so it was early on. That was still pretty early on. That's when the whole world. I was traveling in March of 2020. I was in New York and New Jersey traveling, and it was the early onset of seeing people walk around with masks on. And I didn't know the severity of it. We were kind of like joking around about it. Like, oh, I guess we got to do this. And then we realized when I got back home, like, oh my God, the whole world is like shutting down for real. I was probably on one of the last flights back to Buffalo from New York.
Well, we were walking, my friend and I were in, full gear, and we're walking between these tents in downtown Las Vegas. And she and I just look at each other and we're like, this is odd. Like, if we were anywhere else in the world, this might not strike us as so odd, but we're in downtown Las Vegas. And there was one morning that I stood on Las Vegas Boulevard by myself. I was on my way to work, and I was at the stoplight in front of the Wynn Hotel, and I look over and I see no one else, no other cars, no other people, and I'm going, this is weird. This is Vegas.
You're like in a Stephen King novel at that point. Yeah,
so I pull over.
There'd be like 10,000 people walking around on that street in a day.
It's Vegas. It's Las Vegas Boulevard. It's a party all the time. It's always alive.
Right.
And I look around and I see no one. And I pulled over and I'm like, people have to see this. Like, I have to make a video. When am I ever going to be in Las Vegas Boulevard by myself? So I called one of my friends on the other side of the planet. He was like, you got to break a traffic law. No one's going to know. Because there's no one here.
So you recorded that? Yeah.
I did. Yeah, I did record it because it was so odd. So that was the beginning of 2020, and I had something called a safe passage letter at that time. Mm-hmm. And we're trying to figure out how to put it in the book because you can't, give people's names and, employers and things like that. So we're going to mark out the information.
That's good.
But from the middle of March until the end of April, I had something called a safe passage letter saying that I was a frontline, emergency response person, and not to hold me up if I needed to go somewhere.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, something that's on my mind as I hear all of this and kind of dissect it a little bit and also digest it's maybe the better word, and our audience may be thinking too, there's been a lot said on both sides of it about, we talked about foul play, but also like incentives that hospitals had, whether it was to provide a certain medicine or medication, or they're told that they can or can't, and it changed real quick in the beginning. And then I personally heard that there were incentives. I think if somebody passed away in the hospital, that they got incentives, and I never got the specifics on it from somebody who actually worked in a hospital. Are you able to share any of that as far as what really happened, opposed to like what maybe people are talking about as a conspiracy? Is that public knowledge?
Well, during all of this, we nurses, we heard all of this, like conspiracy theories. We heard this is fake, this is wrong, this is whatever. And I'm not saying that anyone was right or wrong, because the one thing I know from experience in life is there's probably some truth in all sides of the fence. You see what I'm saying? But did I see, because, nurses, we don't deal with billing. We don't, and I've worked with doctors for almost 2 decades. And as being an experienced nurse, I'm not afraid to stand up and say, hey, this is wrong, or why is this going on? I'm not afraid to question, maybe newer nurses, and God bless those new nurses that came to work in 2020, if there's still nurses.
Oh my God.
So
a lot of them,
yeah,
a lot of them did leave, right? A lot of people quit
Yes.
because of what
A
was
lot of
going
people
on.
did, right. So did I see any foul play? No. If I would have, trust me, I would be very vocal about it, because
I
you know
know,
me,
yeah.
I'm a right fighter.
You're someone who is got a great strong will, which I respect about you. And so I was just wondering, if you knew. I mean, even if you didn't do the billing yourself, word gets around, especially in a place where it's
Sure.
the same people working every day, same shifts.
Sure.
So
maybe
typically, water cooler talk is coming out and stuff. And I wasn't sure if maybe you heard anything or got some news on that, because I'm about seeking the truth. This isn't about throwing anybody under the bus,
No,
good, bad, or
no,
ugly.
no.
I just want the truth out there. I mean, I know multiple people who lost family members. I lost my dad and my grandmother within 6 months, both to COVID. And in both cases, we have a lot of questions about what actually happened behind closed doors and everything. And then I'm seeing these numbers about, oh yeah, well, if they write it down, if it's COVID, that benefits them in this way or that way. And I'm like, I want to know, is any of this true? You know what I mean? So I just figured maybe you could shine some light on that.
I don't have any evidence to that, but the one
Okay.
thing I do know, there's things that run on capitalism, and, human beings can be greedy. So,
Yeah.
but I have no evidence. I've never seen it. And like I said, you know me, if I had, I would say.
You're vocal, yeah.
I
Well,
would definitely say.
I know we have to wrap up, unfortunately. I'm going to have you on again. Maybe we can cover a little bit more of when either after the book comes out, or I know that you love to pen different things, and also shine light on your story in Uganda and what you're doing there as well with your family.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, if anyone wants that story, go back to the original interview and check that out. But we can have you. I'd love to have you on again. And you are someone who takes a lot of action, so there's going to be something for us to talk about. That's for sure. With the last moments here, is there anything you'd like to say that we didn't cover about this, the Frontlines 2020, that is heavy on your heart and you just want to make sure it gets out there to the people?
I want nurses to be heard. And not just because it's good for the profession and I love my profession. Nurses are speaking out. They're marching on Washington. They're speaking out on social media. They're coming together. And we're not only doing it for us, we're doing it for you. We're doing it for all of you, for all of our patients and all the people that we take care of and the people that we serve.
Mm-hmm. And I am grateful for you as a friend and as a person, as a nurse who does that, because it's not easy. I mean, I cannot imagine going through what you did, the changes, the ugliness of it, just being, you're supposed to be taking care of 2-3 people, maybe 5 people maximum. And you got, 8 to 10 rooms that you're serving at the same time, with all this uncertainty and your own health to be concerned about. And you did it, and you're brave. And I always say on the show, be brave and bold. And you definitely are both of those. You're not afraid. I know you got the bold shirt too,
Yes,
the mic'd up merch, and I appreciate you rocking that and supporting the show and being a friend of the show and coming on. Like I said, Martha, I'd love to have you on again. And as I tell our audience at the end of every episode, to remember to be great in all that you do, just like Martha is a great nurse and a great person, and to be grateful. And I'm so grateful for your time and all of your efforts over the last 3 to 4 years dealing with COVID. Thank you so much.
Thank you.